Welcome to the Real Estate Edition of That Business Show 2.0 with your host, Jamie Maloney, where real estate becomes show business, with new episodes each Thursday, 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on thatbusinessnetwork.com. Also want to direct you over to our new site, TampaBayREO.com, which is the real estate designed site for the program. That's in addition to thatbusinessnetwork.com. So running multiple different sites. We even have thatbusinessshow.com, where you can catch all of the audios available on demand, in addition to all the social media that we do for the program. So in today's program, I want to talk with the audience about just some FAQs. I had some people just give me some general real estate questions, and just kind of go off the cusp here with these different questions here and see what I elaborate into. And so if you ever have any questions for me that you would like me to discuss on the program, there is a contact form over on TampaBayREO.com, as well as thatbusinessnetwork.com, our primary site for the program. Happy to answer any questions that you may have. Again, use the contact form, TampaBayREO.com, or my email is jamie@TampaBayRadio.com. Happy to address any questions that you may have. So one of the questions I get, can a home depreciate in value? This was a common misconception that people had many years ago, including myself. Prior to getting into real estate, it was common. The scuttle amongst the general public was that homes always depreciated in value. They didn't depreciate in value. And I can remember having this conversation with a number of people, but anything can depreciate in value. It doesn't matter what it is, from a tangible asset to an intangible product or service. Things, rise and fall depending on the supply and demand of the product or the service. And we definitely learned our lesson with homes depreciating in value after the financial crisis of 2008. So yes, homes can depreciate in value. That's why it's important that you have a long-term plan when you're buying a piece of real estate, or unless you're a real estate investor, that you've taken the time to learn how to buy and sell in your marketplace. And if you need any assistance in any of those areas, again, I have been selling real estate for 10 years here in Tampa Bay area. Happy to help you out buying or selling real estate. Hit me up at jamie@TampaBayRadio.com. Another question, is an older home as good of a value as a new home? With homes, you have the primary thing that's associated with a home is its location. And a lot of people may or may not want to be closer to the urban core. They may want to be in the suburban area. So you're going to find newer homes out in the suburban areas, and you're going to find older homes inside of the urban areas. And so it really comes down to more of a question of where do you want to be. And older homes have more of a historical value, and they also have the locational values, or not so much of a value, depending if it's in a poor quality area. But the newer homes are going to be built to a higher standard. You're going to have better building standards. The different codes that weren't enacted years ago are going to be in place. But if a home has been maintained and updated properly over the years, then an older home is just as good as a newer home. I would just advise, watch out for wood frame homes. Those are susceptible to termite and wood destroying organisms, as well as structural issues. If you're in an area that has high wind and water risks, obviously wood frame homes are going to take a beating more so than block or steel erected homes, depending on what area that you're in. Tampa Bay, Florida, typical homes today are constructed out of block with a stucco exterior. Older homes, the bungalow homes, which Tampa Bay is known for, were all wood constructed homes, but yet you have a strong demand for bungalow style homes near the urban core in Tampa, especially in South Tampa, because of the historic quality and the uniqueness. Newer homes may come with higher building standards and better durability, but you lose the uniqueness, at least in our market, unless you're doing a custom home. But by and large, a lot of the new homes that are built today are being constructed in a conforming manner to save cost and add conformity and protect the overall value of the home in a neighborhood. Another question, what are closing costs? Whenever you buy a home, you're going to have certain costs associated with the transaction. The majority of your closing costs come from the mortgage that you get on the property. So if you're buying a property with cash, there are not too many costs associated with closing a real estate transaction, at least not in Florida. The two taxes that you have are the dock stamps on the deed and the title insurance, along with some miscellaneous costs from the from the title company, notaries that may be involved. But in a non-mortgage transaction, the two biggest costs are doc stamps on the deed, which is in Florida a state regulated tax, which is 70 cents per 100. So to calculate that, you take your purchase price, divide it by 100, multiply that times 0.70. That is your documentary stamps on the deed. The other large fee associated with closing a transaction is the title insurance policy. That is also a state regulated fee. It's $5.25 per the first 100,000, per thousand for the first 100,000. I forget the formula as it goes on up, but that is also state regulated. There'll be a closing transaction fee that can vary anywhere from $200 to $500 on average. Some doc preparation fees. Altogether, if you're a buyer purchasing a property with cash, the title insurance and the doc stamps in our market are generally paid by the seller, although everything is negotiable in a real estate transaction. But by and large, those transactions are paid by the seller. So if you're a buyer purchasing a property with cash, other than the acquisition cost of the property, you shouldn't really be spending more than about $500 on the closing, unless you're going to be paying the doc stamps and the title insurance. Many investors like to use their own title companies, and so they agree to pay the owner's title insurance policy again. But everything in a real estate transaction is negotiable. Where you have exorbitant closing costs is with your mortgage, and there could be an origination fee, a processing fee, an underwriting fee. There's a lot of different fees associated or may not be associated with a mortgage. And mortgages can or loan officers make their money in a variety of different ways, and upfront costs are one of them. You'll see loan officers advertising and no upfront fees. They make their money on the back end and through the spread and the interest rate, what they ask for, or what you pay for the interest rate versus what they pay for the interest rate. A variety of different ways that loan officers make their money. So again, that's why it's important with a mortgage to shop around and get a few different good faith estimates, as they were called, and they have to disclose all of their fees associated with a transaction. So next question, what does FSBO mean? FSBO, that is for sale by owner. That is a person who is unrepresented in a transaction and who decides to sell the property without the use of a real estate agent. I got a whole program in the video library on the risks of selling a home as a for sale by owner. Many times those properties sell for far less than they would if they were using a traditional real estate agent, due to nothing more so than the exposure factor. Realtors are able to expose a property to the broad market, whereas a FSBO is not able to expose it to as broad of a market. They don't understand the real estate lingo. They don't understand the contracts. They are not as skilled in negotiations. So oftentimes, if you look at statistics, you'll see that homes that are for sale by owner sold at a depreciated value versus what they could have gotten. This leads to the argument that many realtors will use when selling their services to a homeowner, that the buyer pays the commission, and they pay the commission through an increased price that you would not have gotten had you sold the home by yourself. The seller pays the actual cost of the commission, but they make the argument that the buyer pays the commission through an increased purchase price. Next question, what is a contingency? A contingency is a way to get out of something. It is, if this happens, then I don't have to perform. And so contingencies, the word is used oftentimes. There's a contingency for a mortgage. There's a contingency for a home inspection. It basically branches the contract into two paths. If this happens, then this happens. If not, then this happens. And so if the contract is contingent on a home inspection, that means the person can get a home inspection. If they don't like the results of it, or does not meet the terms or the values stated for repairs inside of the contract, that they could cancel and receive a refund of their deposit. Contingent on home financing is another way that word is used. It means that they are going to get a mortgage, and if they are not approved for the mortgage per the terms inside the contract, they would get their deposit refunded. But again, all that stuff comes down to the specific days and terms and time limits that are spelled out inside of the contract. But a contingency is just, a path by which two different things could happen or a release getting out of a contract in this situation. What is a realtor? This is an area that a lot of people are not familiar with, but realtors are actually as a designation versus a job title. All people that sell real estate are real estate agents, but they're not necessarily realtors. Realtor is a designation that is issued by the National Association of Realtors. And when somebody gets their real estate license and applies for membership in the local board, then they are applying for membership at the National Association of Realtors. With that comes the Code of Ethics, by which you are agreeing to abide by this book of ethics. And if you are not a realtor, you are not being held to the Code of Ethics. Ethics are different than laws, and if you take the time to go to the National Association of Realtors site, you can see the different ethical things that are out there for realtors that they need to abide by. So 9 out of 10 real estate agents that are selling real properties in a market are going to be members of the National Association of Realtors. I would advise against using a real estate agent that is not a member of the National Association of Realtors. It also gives them access to a variety of tools, including the multiple listing service, but it is not a requirement that real estate agents be realtors. Also, commercial real estate agents are not realtors. It's important to remember that they may be a realtor in the residential capacity of their job, but in a commercial real estate transaction, they are not bound by the Code of Ethics. That is a completely separate area of real estate in which buyer beware is the mantra of the profession. In real estate, residential real estate, a home seller or an agent must disclose all facts that are known about a property that could affect or will affect the value. Commercial real estate, they do not. They can know that a sinkhole is sitting underneath the property. They're not required to disclose it because buyer beware, caveat emptor, is the mantra of the commercial real estate business. So again, realtors associated with residential real estate agents who are members of the National Association of Realtors, differing from commercial real estate agents, even though they're both selling real property. We've got some more questions when we come back from the break. In the meantime, learn more about this program, TampaBayREO.com. We'll be back in a moment.
Hi, welcome to Yeager's. We just want to take a minute and show you what we're all about. At Yeager's, our primary business is hardwood flooring, although we are remodelers for kitchen, bath, and general construction. We operate a fleet of shop-at-home vans that have all the flooring type products, hardwood flooring, laminate flooring, tiles, stone, what have you. So we're able to come out first with products in our vehicles and take a look at the setting, how the colors will work, and then to be able to come up with some options and ideas for you. If that's not good enough, we have a large distribution center that we inventory product and have a nice display area.
Welcome back to the real estate edition of That Business Show 2.0, where real estate becomes show business. Today, we're going through just some FAQs of real estate. Myself selling over 2,000 properties in the last 10 years, and I've accumulated a pretty good bit of knowledge about buying and selling real estate. And if you need the service in Tampa Bay, reach out to me personally, Jamie@TampaBayRadio.com. If you're anywhere across the country listening to me, we have a vast relocation and referral network that we can help you out with. Still consider me a resource and connect with me again, Jamie@TampaBayRadio.com. So let's go through some of the other questions that people had asked for me. They'll ask, what is an escrow officer? Escrow is another word for the deposit in a real estate transaction. Whenever a buyer makes an offer on a property, they agree to put down a certain deposit as a measure of good faith. And any valid contract must have some type of offer from each party. Each person has to put something of value on the line, or else it's not a valid contract. So a buyer agrees to put down a certain deposit, and that's usually held by the title companies. The title companies are the people that are going to be handling the closing of the transaction and issuing the title insurance. Deposits are a negotiable item. I always say they are a measure of the sincerity or how serious an offer is. If somebody's offering on a $500,000 house but only offering a $1,000 deposit, then I sense a lot of fear in that, in their ability to even close and perform on that transaction. But if they're offering on a $500,000 house and they're putting a $100,000 deposit, that tells me they're very serious about closing on this property, because if they don't close, they risk losing the deposit on the transaction, given that they performed outside the terms of the contract. So a deposit in Florida is due within 3 days of an executed contract, but it could be made ahead of the time. Good real estate practice is actually to deposit the money with an escrow officer even before looking for a property. It's not common practice in our market, but that is good real estate practice to have the deposit already in place. And so your best real estate agents, when they're working with a buyer, they get them to commit. It's another way you get a buyer to commit. Get them to put the deposit with an escrow officer. If it needs to be transferred, it can be transferred. A lot of brokerages will hold the deposit too, but sellers oftentimes will want the deposit transferred over to the closing company. Also makes it's one less mistake that could happen on closing day when you go to close a transaction and the deposit is still with the brokerage and they got to transfer it over. So it's a good practice to, once the property goes under contract, have the deposit held with the title company, aka the escrow officer. Look, what is the difference between being pre-qualified and pre-approved for a loan? Pre-qualification is the lower of the two. Pre-approved is the higher of the two statuses. Pre-qualification basically means a loan officer has taken your application over the phone. Nothing has been verified. They've probably ran your credit, and based on the Q&A of your incomes and your expenses and your credit, whether or not you qualify for the mortgage. But it comes with a great degree of inaccuracy, because like I said, nothing has been verified. You may have inflated your income, you may have forgotten an expense or two, and the debt to income ratio a lot of times is right there on the line, and a few $100s in income or expenses can make the difference between actually getting approved for the mortgage. So what I always recommend is that a person gets pre-approved for the mortgage prior to shopping for the home. Pre-approved means they have submitted all their documents to the underwriter or their loan officer, so that their ability to purchase a home has been validated and verified, so that the only contingencies on the sale of the property is on the seller's side, the ability to provide free and clear title and a valid appraisal showing that the property is worth the value of the contract. So very important, get pre-approved for a mortgage. It makes your offer as good as cash in that situation, because now you have the cash available. There's not going to be any surprises. And this is something that a seller and their listing agent should look for when accepting or reviewing offers from potential buyers. What does the loan officer's pre-approval or pre-qualification letter says? And I will be honest, those two terms are used interchangeably in the business, but to be specific, a pre-approval is preferred over a pre-qualification. A good loan officer is going to put inside the body of the pre-approval that documents have or have not been verified. If they have not been verified, that means they are pre-qualified. There could be some surprises along the way. If they are pre-approved, the documents have been reviewed. So it makes for a much smoother transaction. Also, because when the property goes under contract, if the buyer is only pre-qualified, that's when they begin the underwriting process. That's when they tell the borrower, send me your W-2s, send me your tax returns, and they begin that point. That can all be done prior to going to contract. So at that point, they can begin the validation of the asset. They can immediately order the appraisal. The loan officer doesn't want to order the appraisal until the pre-qualification of the buyer, the pre-approval of the buyer is completed, or else the buyer could get denied for their loan and cost the buyer $400 or $500 for an appraisal that is at that point worthless. So get a loan approval done prior to going on the market. Your offer then is just as good as cash, and you can close a property. And at that point, 7 to 14 days, depending on the time frame of the appraiser getting out to the property, and that's really what delays the property closing at that point on the buyer side. It's just the property appraiser's ability to get out to the property. Question, title insurance, can you explain that? Title insurance protects you from any liens, encumbrances, or past ownerships on a property. It's very important to have title insurance on a property because somebody could knock on your door and claim ownership of the property. And so title insurance is a one-time fee that is paid based on, in Florida, the purchase price of the house. And if there's any claims of ownership or encumbrances that were not otherwise disclosed as exceptions on your title policy, then your title insurance company will hire an attorney to defend your rights to the property. So it basically gives you free and clear assurance that you are the legal owner of the property and that other people cannot come along and claim some type of ownership to the property. Also, pay attention to the types of deeds that are used in the transaction. You have the quitclaim deed, the special warranty deed, and a general warranty deed. Those are the three most common types of deeds that are used in a real estate transaction. In a traditional transaction, you would want the general warranty deed, where the seller guarantees free and clear ownership during their length of ownership and prior lengths of ownership as well. If you're buying a property from a bank, though, they're going to offer the special warranty deed, in which they are offering you free and clear assurance that they did nothing to encumber the property during their tenure of ownership. The lowest form of deed, in which a title company is not going to accept, is the quitclaim deed, and these are often used to add people to a ownership, take people off of ownership, but they can be used in shady real estate transactions. But in a sense, the person that is selling the property, being a quitclaim deed, is making no assurance to you that they even own the property. So be very leery of anybody that sells you a property and is offering just a quitclaim deed. Involve a title insurance company. They're not going to accept the quitclaim deed because they are basically saying that they are not guaranteeing that they are even the owners of the property. So all those different types of deeds can be offset with title insurance. If the title insurance company gives you a policy, then you can rest assured that you are protected. Doesn't mean there aren't something out there that they missed, but if they did, if something does come up along the way, then the title insurance bears the cost defending you in courts. All right, let's look at another one of the questions over here. Let's go back over to the seller questions that I had. How should I price my home? That's something I like to talk about on the program a lot, because it's traditional, or I wouldn't say traditional, but it's oftentimes that a seller overprices a home and then they sit on the market, which costs the seller money. It's important to price the home at the fair market value and know that whether you're not in a depreciating or in a appreciating marketplace. All sellers add emotional value to the cost of their home. So you got to deduct that emotional value, the things that you did to the home that you think are going to add a lot of value, because buyers do not have any emotional value associated with the property. And so that extra price that is over and beyond what the fair market value is oftentimes deemed the emotional value. So if you're in a home market that the home prices are appreciating, then you want to stay just underneath of that appreciating level to stay to catch the buyer's attention and also give them some type of value that to know that the home is going to appreciate. If the home is depreciating, you want to stay ahead of the curve and you keep the home priced, slightly below where it's going to be. That way your home stands out from the other homes who are going to be appreciating or who are above the value of which they are going to fall from. And it's important to price your home effectively so that you're getting offers within the first 7 to 14 days on market. If you're not getting home value, or if you're not getting offers within those first 7 to 14 days, that means your home either has a price issue or it has a condition issue. Like I've said before on this program, at any given time, there is a pool of buyers ready, willing, and able to buy the property right now because they know what that home is worth. They've been looking for homes for 6 months to 12 months and they're ready to strike. And when they see a home that is ready, that it meets that criteria, that is priced properly, you should be getting multiple offers on the property. But if you overprice the property, those buyers that are ready, willing, and able to buy are not going to buy. You'll lose that sense of urgency. The property sits on market, and now the people that are looking at the property are a lot of times those first-time lookers, the ones who are just coming into the market to look, who are not going to buy until 6 or 12 months of reviewing properties. So when you list a property, you have your greatest asset on your side, that is sense of urgency. You want to take advantage of those buyers who have already been looking for 6 to 12 months, not the ones who are going to be starting looking and seeing that the property is an aged property on the marketplace. It destroys the value, and 9 times out of 10, if a property sits on the market for an extended period of time, with the exception of unique properties or $1 million and up properties, you're going to lose value. Price your property to sell within that first 7 to 14 days, get it closed and done over within the first 30 days. I've again sold 2,000 properties. I've seen this over and over and over again. The properties that sell the quickest are the properties that sell for the most value. Got a lot more questions when I come back from the break. I'm Jamie Maloney, your host. We'll be back in a moment. And we're back to the real estate edition of That Business Show 2.0, where real estate becomes show business. If you'd like to come onto this program, we're always looking for guests. Simply go to tbsinterview.com. We will take some guests from time to time on the real estate edition, in addition to the regular program, which airs weekdays at 9 a.m. on thatbusinessnetwork.com. Again, tbsinterview.com for ways to come onto the program. So today we're going through just some general FAQs on real estate and answering some questions I had people put together about the real estate. I often assume a lot of what I'm talking about is common knowledge, but in any industry, anybody who's spent many years and done as many transactions as I have, you begin to take certain knowledge for granted. So oftentimes I'm surprised when I'm explaining certain things to people that I truly thought was common knowledge. So again, going back to the basics with some general real estate questions today and educating the public on the different areas inside of this profession. So talking kind of from a seller perspective right now. And so now the question I have, is there a best time to put my house onto the marketplace? Not really. Yes and no. That's a kind of a general question. A lot of people will say you should put your home on the marketplace in the summer months because the kids are out of school and people are looking for the homes at that point. They're able to wait out. They're able to start school at a new location in a new district, if that the case may be. And so that is one time that I will say that probably is a better time than others to put your home onto the marketplace. But you don't notice, at least on our markets, any huge difference in that. Also in Florida, we get the snowbirds, and so we have a whole different group of people that come down into our state during the winter months versus who's here in the summer months. And so really, I don't see a difference in market placement in our market. Other states, other areas, there may be better times to put your home onto the market. Basically, you want to put your home on the market at the point where there's the highest demand. And so if you can pinpoint a time of the year in your marketplace where there is an increased demand for whatever reason there may be, there is the summer months, which is equal in every marketplace when all those kids go on vacation. And in Florida, when the seniors come down to Florida, there's increased demand. But other states, other areas may have different things that go on throughout the year. But you're looking for the time at which there is the most demand. And best time to put your home on the marketplace is also when the home is ready to go onto the market. It means the home is in as pristine as condition as you're willing to make it. You've taken care of all the cosmetic flaws and you've gotten the home ready for sale. Important to present the home in a manner that is going to affect offers and is going to take advantage of the eye-catching ability of the home. So invest in upgraded landscaping, take care of the grass, put down fresh mulch, easy ways to improve the quality of the home. Paint the interior. It's not too hard to paint a home. You can do that over the course of a couple of weekends yourself without even hiring somebody. Steam clean the carpets. Those are all just basic things that you can do to get the home ready. If you're going to do any type of extensive rehab, the best place to put the money is inside the kitchen of the home. That is always the centerpiece of any home sales, is the kitchen, followed up by the baths. And so that's when your home is ready for the marketplace, is the best time to put the home on the market. What are comps? Comps are what your home is compared to arrive at the value. When a property is appraised, the appraiser goes out and looks for homes similar to yours. Same thing a realtor is going to do when they are pricing the home, either to recommend a listing price or to recommend a buyer pay a certain price for a property. They're going to compare it to other properties. So your home in that situation is considered to be the subject property. The comparables then that are similar to it are then compared against it. And if the property value, if it has something that is inferior to your home, such as it's a smaller home, they would adjust the sales price of the comp upward. If it's superior to your home, then they would adjust the sales price of your home downward. Some common adjustments in our market, for instance, whether a home has or does not have a pool, will affect the sales price in a lot of the markets. Some markets, some sub-markets of Tampa Bay, that's not as important as others. But for instance, Carrollwood, Brandon, there's a lot of pool homes in those two communities. And so a home with a pool would sell for higher than a home without it because it's less conforming if it does not have a pool home. But it's if you're in central Tampa, Sulphur Springs, having a pool could even be a detriment to value because it's not a high quality neighborhood. You have the risk of drowning and maintenance, and it's not something that people are looking for in those areas. And so different things have different values depending on where they're at. But a common adjustment for a pool in Florida, $5,000 for a typical entry-level home. When you get up to $500,000, $1 million homes, it's very important that those homes do have pools, and those adjustments could be $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 or more in price, depending on whether you have or do not have a home or have a pool. Square footage adjustments are always critical to any appraisal. A common adjustment for square footage that I like to do is just simply to take the difference of the two square footages, divide it by 4, and then multiply that times the sold price per square foot of the comp. So again, difference of the two. So if there's a 200 square foot difference between the two, divide that number by 4, and then I multiply that times the sold price per square foot of the comp. And whether it's more or less, you add or subtract that to the comp to make the square footage adjustment. That's not a formula that carries over into every marketplace, and it's not a formula that carries over into the higher end market, but it's a good adjustment for homes in Tampa that are $250,000 and under. But wherever that you're at, you could use a different calculation, and all that comes from experience and review of what's selling and comparing the square footages versus the other adjustments that are made on an appraisal. Bathroom adjustments are critical. Bathrooms 1, 2 versus not having 1 or 2 baths, or not having the second bath, makes a big difference. A lot of homes today are built with that second bath. And going back earlier to the question about, is there a difference between buying newer homes and older homes? The functionality changes with the newer homes. You're getting into the 2-car garages, the second bathrooms, because you're getting into a different type of a lifestyle in the newer homes. And so the importance of having a second bath does make a $5,000 or $10,000 value adjustment in many of the homes. Whether or not a home is block versus wood frame makes a difference in home value. Wood frame is inferior to block, with the exceptions of being in a historic area, and then those could be preferred. Semillon Heights, for instance, South Tampa, where the bungalows are, people would prefer wood frame for the historic look over the block homes that are in the suburbs. From an investor's standpoint, though, somebody who's going to use a home for rental, they're going to prefer something durable. So they're going to value tile flooring, the block homes, the homes that are going to outlast different tenants coming in and out of the property. So things that you think are of value may or may not be, depending on where you're at. All of that, though, comes into play when you're reviewing comps. Comps are pulled, adjustments are made to subtract or add to the value of the property, and from there they arrive at what your home is considered to be of fair market value. So that's all appraisal, that's all comparative market analysis, BPO, broker price opinion, a lot of different classes and tutorials and coursework that's out there for real estate agents to learn that. It's open to the general public as well. Appraisers are held to a higher degree of standard in valuing a property. I mean, we do essentially what appraisers do, but appraisers have their standards of practice that they adhere to. Realtors do not. And so appraisals are held to a higher standard of value than a broker price opinion or a comparative market analysis. If you hear the term CMA or BPO, those are, again, comparative market analysis and broker price opinion. The difference oftentimes is the person who's saying BPO is somebody who's doing is a bank agent, somebody who's used to doing values for bank-owned properties. Comparative market analysis is a traditional real estate agent. All in all, they're essentially the same thing. They may be presented slightly different ways, but either way, they are a comparison of value against the comps in the neighborhood, and they use those to arrive at what they think that your home is worth. BPOs and comparative market analysis usually use 3 sold comps and 3 active comps, with an emphasis on what is actually sold versus what is active. And from what is active, that you can kind of see if are you in an appreciating market or a depreciating market. Appraisals don't value the active comps. You'll see anywhere between like 3 and 6 different sold comps on an appraisal, and so the solds are where your values come from. You can't price a property based on what's sitting on the market and not selling, aka the active properties. Look for the strike price properties at that point. Those are the pending properties. What is actually under contract right now? So your value comes from what is actually sold. Your actual value as it is of today comes from the pending properties, and the active properties will tell you which way the market is going, and the properties that are active are not selling, and so that means they're overpriced versus what is going on in the market. Or the absorption rate is slow. The absorption rate is how quickly properties are being absorbed. For instance, vacant land will have a lower absorption rate than single family homes, but vacant land could sit longer but still obtain its fair market value. It's being absorbed at a lower rate. Let's see, can I back out of a contract with one buyer and accept a new higher offer from a second buyer? Not once you execute the contract on the property. If you haven't executed the contract, then if you've just verbally accepted, then yes, you could. But once the contract is in writing, you cannot back out from the contract. Do you have to sell to the person with the highest offer? No, you don't have to sell to anybody for that matter until you sign a contract. And so just because somebody gives you a full price offer on a property, you can even demand more. I know in some luxury markets, that's even a pricing technique to price the property which at a price that they know is low, get the offer in, and then ask for more money on top of that. I see that technique used a lot of times on $1 million listing in the different cities. But so you're not required to sell a property at any particular price. You're only required to sell to the person at which you have a written contract. If you back out of the contract and refuse to sell, then you can be sued for specific performance and get yourself into a legal battle at that point. We've got to take another break, but we got another segment of the Real Estate Edition with a lot more FAQs. When we come back from the break, learn more about this program where you can also search different real estate listings and keep up to date with local foreclosures in the Tampa Bay market over at tampabayreo.com. And if you'd like a question to be addressed on the program or just with me personally, send me an email, jamie@tampabayreo.com. There's also a contact form on the site at tampabayreo.com. We'll be back in a moment.
Hi, welcome to Yeagers. We just want to take a minute and show you what we're all about. At Yeagers, our primary business is hardwood flooring, although we are remodelers for kitchen, bath, and general construction. We operate a fleet of shop-at-home vans that have all the flooring type products, hardwood flooring, laminate flooring, tiles, stone, what have you. So we're able to come out first with products in our vehicles and take a look at the setting, how the colors will work, and then to be able to come up with some options and ideas for you. If that's not good enough, we have a large distribution center that we inventory product and have a nice display area.
And we're back to the Real Estate Edition of That Business Show 2.0. I'm your host, Jamie Maloney, where real estate becomes show business. So today we're talking about different FAQs from a variety of different areas in real estate. Another question I have here, who is responsible for making repairs, and if any, as a result of the home inspection reports conducted for the buyer? So who's responsible for the repairs on the property? First thing you need to know is what type of contract that you're using. Are you using an as-is contract, or are you using a contract that has a repair addendum? We call that the regular contract in Florida. So, and if you're dealing with any type of bank-owned property, 99 out of 100 times it's going to be an as-is contract. There's not going to be any type of repairs that are set forth to be done for the buyer as a result of the home inspection. So an as-is contract, the buyer is responsible for doing any repairs that they find inside the home inspection, depending on the cost of the repairs and within their inspection time. If they don't like the inspection, they could decide to cancel the contract or maybe renegotiate with the seller. I always advise before canceling, unless it's just absolutely something that you can't handle, go back to the seller and ask to renegotiate with them as a result of the contract. And a good seller will have accepted a property or accepted a price on the property that gives them some room to negotiate in the event of an inspection that does not turn up the results that the buyer is expecting. That way you have some more negotiating power, and that happens quite frequently. The state contract in Florida defaults to 1.5% of the purchase price if the blank in front of that the percentage is left unfilled in. So that means the seller will compensate the buyer up to 1.5% of the purchase price for the cost of the repairs, given that the items are warrantable items, and there's a whole section on there as to what's considered a warrantable item. It's not, oh, you know what, I didn't like the color of the paint, I want you to paint the house. It's got to be something that is usually structural, something that's integral to the home, a plumbing issue, a leaking roof, something that is going to affect the health and safety and the overall functionality of the home. So again, that can be zeroed out, but if it's left blank, then the seller would be obligated to actually conduct the repairs on the property. And so that's in a standard contract, a non-as-is contract. Our market, it's very common to use the as-is contract. That became popular due to a lot of the bank-owned properties that were in our market, and realtors being told over and over and over again to use the as-is contract. So many of them have gotten into that habit. But if you're selling a home with a traditional seller, and you'll oftentimes see selling as is for convenience of the seller, that's not always the best marketing move. You don't want to necessarily do that. So this is a conversation you need to have with the seller. Offering a repair allowance is going to assure our buyers that you're operating in good faith, and that if there's any defects in the home, that you're willing to work with the buyer on it. So not always the best move to use an as-is contract from a seller's perspective, even if you think that that is how to advise the seller. Banks do it simply because of their banks, and they don't want to be messing around with a lot of different repairs, and they're also managing thousands upon thousands of different properties. So from a bank perspective, it's a whole different area. Speaking though of banks, though, it is common for a bank to renegotiate after an inspection is done on a property. So don't be afraid to ask for some type of reduction. Even if they say no, at least you tried, and you don't have to push or anything. But a lot of times the bank will offer some type of compensation after the inspection. Some of them have policies against that, but I've sold many of them, and they oftentimes are flexible after the home inspection is done. So throw it out there. It can't hurt, but if they say no, then they usually mean no. So at that point, you would just have to walk away. So let's go over here to some other questions. What is an exclusive right to listing, exclusive or right to sell listing? Whenever you list a property with a real estate agent, you are signing an agreement to which they are the exclusive agent that can sell your property. Some people will sell their property, of course, via FSBO, which we talked about earlier, but you could have an open listing in which multiple different agents can be to sell the property, and but it's most traditional that an exclusive right of sale agreement is put into place where the listing agent is entitled to a certain portion of the commission, and the difference then is sent over to the selling side of the transaction. So in any transaction, you're going to have two sides to the transaction. You have the list side and then you have the buyer side or the sell side. Oftentimes there are different agents, but it could be that the listing agent represents both the buyer and the seller in the transaction. It's important to make sure that you're in a state that allows for dual representation, but you get into different legal issues and different titles for those roles. In Florida, all realtors are by default transaction brokers. They are not single agents by default. Single agents give the duty of loyalty to the seller, and in some states such as California, the representation of both sides is considered dual agency, and it's illegal because you can't be loyal to two opposing sides. But in Florida, that's illegal. In California, that is legal. I don't know if I said that right, but in Florida, it's common for a listing agent to bring the buyer for the property, and it's also commonly said that people refer to them as their client, that their principal. In essence, they are not those unless they have signed a single agent disclosure. They are operating in a transaction broker role. Their job is to get the transaction done and not to show favoritism to either side. You're not supposed to disclose to the opposing party if your seller is willing to take less for the property, or if you're on the buyer side, that your buyer is willing to pay more for a property. That's all goes against the duties of a transaction broker in the state of Florida. Going back to commissions, though, typical commissions can range. Oftentimes they're anywhere between 5 and 7%, depending on the property, but it is a negotiable item. But it's important to pay attention to how it is split. A lot of people don't really understand how that works, and so let's say you sign a listing agreement with a brokerage for 6%. You want to look in that contract to see how much they are giving to the selling agent, because some of them will keep 4 for themselves and only offer 2 to the selling agent. So when they put the property in the multiple listing service and realtors are looking for potential homes to sell, they are all looking at how much that home is paying to the cooperating broker. And the homes that are not paying as much as others, those realtors are not going to push those homes to the buyers. It just comes down to money. They want to make as much money as possible. All of us want to make money in any business that they do. And so it's really, they should be offering 3% to each side. But you as the seller dictate that. You could tell the listing agent, listen, I'm not signing this agreement unless you offer 4 to the listing agent. 4 to the selling agent, and you get 2%. That's up to you if you want to accept those terms. But the more, and that's what banks do, they offer more to the selling agent than they do to the listing agent. Common bank agreements also range in what they price or what they sell the property for, or the compensation that they give, I should say. But in a 5% agreement, which is very common, 3% will go to the selling agent, 2% will go to the listing agent. So that way, because they know that the listing agent is getting multiple properties from them, they're being compensated over the long run. They know that the selling agents are in the multiple listing service and are going to sell the properties. They're paying at least what they consider fair market compensation for properties in their area. So, but you as a seller need to make sure that you understand on how the commission is being divided up amongst the different parties in the transaction. And yes, the seller does write the check at closing for the commission. And I was reading an article from somebody recently in which they had used the selling point that by using a realtor, the buyers pay the commission. And that's a sales technique to tell them that if you sell it by yourself, you're going to get a lower price. But if you use a realtor, you're going to get an increased price. So the buyer is paying the commission. And that's what I talked about earlier in the show. And the seller just did not understand that and thought the buyer literally was paying the commission. And so now he's in a situation here where the seller walked out of closing because he thought the buyer was paying the commission. So be perfectly clear. Make sure you explain that in the contract. You as the seller can divide up the commission however that you see fit, but most often it's the split 50 and 50 between the listing agent and the selling agent. Look for any transaction fees that are in there as well. My brokerage has a $3.45 transaction fee on each transaction that covers storage costs and other fees as Coldwell Banker puts it out there. It's mostly related to the storing of the records, though. Other brokerages don't charge those fees. Again, that's all up to you as a seller, what you're willing to do with your agents. A couple of minutes left here. I answer a quick question, prepaid interest. If you pay points on a mortgage, that is interest that you're paying for prior to it becoming due. And so when you're coming down to the question, should not pay points on a property, you got to look at the holding period that you expect the property to be that you're going to be holding the property for. If you're going to be holding it for a year, it probably doesn't make sense to pay points because you're paying interest before it becomes due. And there are plenty of calculators out there that'll show you how long you need to hold a property for before paying points. And again, a point is nothing more than 1% of the mortgage, and it is prepaid interest, and it just saves you money down the road by paying it up front. But do not pay it if you're not going to hold the property long enough for it to come due. A good discussion to have with your loan officer when they're offering points to pay down an interest on a property. So I went through a lot of different things on the program today. Jamie at TampaBayRadio.com if you have more questions, and keep an eye on our new real estate site at TampaBayREO.com. If you'd like a free home valuation, go to thathomevaluation.com. That directs you to the valuation page on TampaBayREO.com now, where I offer a free home valuation to people. Again, thathomevaluation.com. So tune in each Thursday at 9 a.m. Catch new episodes at thatbusinessnetwork.com. And find us on iTunes and also on YouTube, and subscribe and leave a review. It helps the program grow. So you've been listening to the Real Estate Edition of That Business Show 2.0 with your host, Jamie Maloney, where real estate becomes show business.